I do that
I
at the gym. They have like a machine like that.
do they for your anus? It's an interesting gym you go
Well, no,
to.
it's made more for like the pelvis muscles when
Okay,
you
fine.
give birth, but men do that too. But
Okay,
anyway,
but
that's an
but there you
aside.
go. It's another example of our mechanized society. You can't do this by the machines in your gym. I have to tell you, they're not going to give you immortality, Dragster. You have to go into the Swedish forest and sit there for about 5 years, or into a dark cave in Nepal and have some peasant bringing you, I don't know, an ear of corn twice a month. You have to sit in the darkness and practice with your sphinxter, and then you might start to get command over this after a while.
Okay, so all this Sphinxter stuff is fascinating, but what is even more fascinating is that you apparently were the first person, and now this is stuff that you cannot unsee, where you see this ancient Chinese map with this
Mhm.
path that with these wonderful symbols kind of explain all these different uh, things that the body does, and then here's a map of Britain, and the one that is we're using here, I don't know if that's the one from 500 AD, I don't remember now, but yeah, the shape it's uncanny. It's the same shape.
It's the same shape. It's the same shape. There's a lot of weird stuff in history. There's a lot of weird stuff in history, and there's also just a lot of weird stuff in the natural world. May I say, Dragster, it's very weird that the sun and the moon appear to be the same size, and thus we can have a solar eclipse. That is a
Yes.
pretty freaky coincidence. Obviously, they're
Yes.
not the same size, but the very fact that they appear identically sized to us on Earth, it's not just history that's weird, Dragster. May I
Mhm.
suggest everything is strange? And that's truly a feeling I've always had growing up. Everything is incredibly strange, and much stranger than what my teachers, my friends, even the books, most of the books I read are telling me. Am I alone in thinking that everything is incredibly peculiar? And I just allowed myself to just let rip, as they say, about what it is I find strange about the world, history, other people, and that's where my book comes out of.
Well, but we live in a very dangerous time, Susanna, where people do believe all sorts of things. Chiefly that Bill Gates, together with Angela Merkel, who is Hitler's
It's true.
daughter, sorry, they drink the blood of children while
It's
they
true.
are
It's
uh,
true. It's true.
infecting
But
us with the vaccine that is
of
making
course,
us
but
all into I don't know what.
of course, and it's because and there's a lot of very dangerous, terrible nonsense written on the internet. But there's also a tremendous culture that says we cannot be conspiracy minded, which is slightly a culture that says eat your vegetables, take what you're given, don't question things. If you question anything,
Hmm.
and you start to be in, we're going to lump you in with people who wear red hats and enjoy QAnon.
Hmm.
To the very action of questioning anything becomes itself a taboo topic. But like any novelist, like anybody with any sense in the world, you've got to question everything. You do have to
Hmm.
question everything. You
Hmm.
you might end up saying yes, it's all nonsense, and I believe what everybody's saying to me and what they say on TV and Twitter. Fine, but you have, it's part of the job of growing up to question everything. I do think that.
Let's just say doing your own research does not mean looking at one website, Susanna. Uh, it means looking at a million websites like you did. I'm
It
just
absolutely
kidding.
does. And you know something? It's not just about looking at websites, Dragster. It's also
Y-
about reading some books, um,
yes. Thank
and
you very.
and talking to other people who know more than you, and getting.
Although, this is interesting, and I once tweeted to somebody who, like an Elon Musk fanboy, and I
Mhm.
said, "Oh my God, the dude really needs to read some books." The guy replies to me, the fanboy, "Oh, Elon read a lot of books." And actually, that is true. He read a lot of books. He just came. I mean, I know that's not what you're saying, but I mean, me at the ripe age of 52, I now realize that there's a lot of people who read a lot of books, but came up with very wrong conclusions. Number
You know
one,
something?
and also really didn't grow up at all through those books.
Mhm, mhm. The world is full of all sorts of people. What matters is what you bring to it, and what matters is to what degree you're prepared to accept what is told to you, and to what degree you're prepared to go on the journey of questioning it. I've got to
Yeah.
recommend being a novelist. I've got to say, so far, it's a very unpaid profession. But as soon as you say to yourself that what you're doing is making up a story, then you're allowed to play with all the toys in the toolbox. Whereas sometimes, if what you're saying is that you're doing nonfiction, or you're just trying to have a political argument or talk about the way things are,
Yeah.
Especially in our age where there's so much data that can be collected and everything you're saying can be checked against. It can be very hard to construct a new argument because you can be fact checked and wrong footed by a mistake you've made at every opportunity. Whereas if you're writing novels, if you're making stuff up, the whole world is available to you. You can, and
Yeah.
you're talking to me about now about conspiracies, 9/11. I just made it all up for my book. That's a
Yeah.
perfectly valid thing to say. That's why I love fiction, and that's why it feels so fabulous to write fiction, because anything is possible in it. All that matters is the story connects, grabs you, and there's enough in it that sits at the back of your mind, the reader's mind anyway, that you can begin to play. And so, it's glorious liberation to me, fiction.
There's a
And
drone over your head. There's a drone over you. The
oh,
drone comes closer. The drone is listening in,
the
and
drone
done.
wants to the drone wants to
Yeah.
remove the fiction from my head, and I think the
Yeah.
fiction's being removed from all of our heads. I think people read a lot less fiction these days. I think everyone is very fact bound. The fiction that comes out is often not big parable fiction
Yeah.
of craziness. It's kind of, the good fiction is often quite domestic. It's quite
Yes.
realistic, and I think that that's a limitation. I think that's another aspect of the limitation that says don't question things too much,
I
because
think that, but that might be. Don't you think this is interesting that you bring this up? I wonder if this is also a response to the times where kind of like a comfort food thing, maybe
there's all
when
sorts of
times are
different.
too crazy.
When times are too crazy, yes, but I've got to say there's a lot of fantastical fiction that is very comfort-inducing. I think of, for example, Tintin. It's pure fantasy, pure comfort food, right? But those are very
Hmm.
large, wide topics that are being addressed there, and that's the whole world you're getting to see. I don't think that making things realistic is any more comforting than making things that seem larger and more crazy. I really don't think that.
Hmm.
It depends, but there's all sorts of reasons to read books, and I'm not dissing down on any of them. What I'm just saying is that the action of mad fantasy is not totally popular and in vogue these days. And that seems to me another incursion of our freedom. The freedom to think crazy thoughts. We do a lot of self-policing inside ourselves also these days, don't we? It's not just the nanocam flying ahead. It's
Yeah.
also all the nanocams that I've swallowed.
Yeah.
Anything we say might, or think even, it's not a question of anything we say might be held against us. Anything we think might be held against us too. There are repercussions for just saying, oh, you know what, I'm just going to read some big crazy thing. I might not agree with it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. One might begin to feel, oh no, it's not correct. It's going to talk anyway. You see where I'm going with it. But I'm a big proponent of fantasy and playing things out in the unreal world, particularly because actually it seems to me that lots of what we call the real world is pure fantasy. But that's a different topic.
I think there. Anyway, my perception as a kind of an omnivore and reading, and also with the book club, I read so much stuff. I do feel a wide variety um, available. Not only what you're saying. I think there's some crazy fantasy stuff, but your book still stands out. If you're just tuning in, this is the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and with me Susanna Kleeman, and her debut novel is Twice, and I did read it twice, and it's absolutely magnificent. Here in the local chat, I was Valencia Skydancer says the fuck earlier. I mean, that's the response. And I know Valencia told me earlier she bought the book just like 20 minutes ago.
Oh,
Um, and Dex is saying vehicles are watching us. Dex, that's old news. Gotta read the book. There's a lot more watching you, trust me. And Stranger says you're absolutely right. And I forgot what that was. What you're absolutely
just
right about.
about everything, Draxter. About everything.
Absolutely. Stranger is a big Thomas Pynchon fan, and he knows that there is more stuff going on. Now, here, the slide that is on the projector right now on the slide board, with all these different aspects that give the reader context. If you go onto your website and you find out really all these real connections that are mentioned in the plot, one of them is networks. Give us an example of a network, um, maybe under under the desert or whatever. But I mean, one of the things that really impressed me about the book is that, and I think I said this last time, there is a pace as a musician, I'm always interested in pacing, and some people are very good with pacing and rhythm, and you are just excellent with rhythm and pacing in my mind. And it starts
You.
off in like a very kinetic feeling, and you just keep it going. It's really relentless in the best possible sense of this word, but it's not overwhelming. I don't know what it is. I mean, uh, as people know, I don't watch TV. I don't watch scripted television. I watch documentaries in the audiovisual format. Probably only documentaries, but I used to watch TV. I used to watch Lost. Lost was a magnificent TV show, and also Black Mirror. The first season I think was very good. Um, those are the vibes that I would, if people were asking me like what are the kind of vibes of like TV shows that this book sort of reminds me of, I would say like Lost and yeah, and the Black
Thank you.
Mirror. But the networks, like one pick a network from the story that is happening there.
Well, there's kind of two sorts of contrasting networks in my story. One is a technical network, which exists, Ethernet, all of that, but it's a technical network that also has built a lot of connecting networks around the world. And okay, we're dancing around the topic. Yes, in my book, there are things that happen underground. There are tunnels under the earth. But I have to say to you, Draxtor, there are tunnels under the earth. And there is,
Yeah.
in fact, there are very ancient tunnels under the earth. And I'll tell you something mind blowing. There are tunnels that connect all of Europe underground that are Stone Age tunnels. I've been into some of them. I'm not making this up. Your guests can go and have a look. Some of them are natural limestone caverns. Some of them are absolutely not. Some of them are built things made by Stone Age people. Underneath Turkey, there are underground cities. It's supposed that that was a much safer place to hang out during very dangerous times. But there are networks, I think I'm not kidding to say that there are networks that link Romania and France that are underground networks of caves and tunnels built and excavated by people. Feel free to look that up afterwards. This stuff. This is the place where history is just an amazing thing to me. It is true that these things exist. We cannot explain them in terms of the history that we tell ourselves or that's written in our books, often because these things are too advanced for the history that we think that we know, and therefore they're just forgotten and people don't mention them. Only people like me who burrow underground for this kind of information see them and bring them up. There's also highly technical tunnels under the earth. Elon Musk is building some of them. And I think Chinese people are building some of them also. I was telling you, Draxtor, about a high-speed network I've read that's going to link Beijing with a southern Chinese city 200 miles apart. You'll be able to do it in 10 minutes. And let me tell you, if I was the secret ruler of the world, I would be building underground tunnels. I can only imagine that's what's happening. Underneath
Yeah.
London at the moment, it's a massive project. I live in London. There's a massive project called Crossrail, which is the building of absolutely massive tunnels that will connect different parts of Britain with different parts of Europe. Massive excavation jobs are going on with the most insane machines. I was looking up when I was writing the book. If you're bored and wanting something to look up on the internet, look up Crossrail machines. Massive claw-like, massive objects that just burrow through the ground. So those sorts of networks exist. But in my book, those sorts of networks are contrasted with if there was such a situation where things are so controlled, how on earth would you be able to have any form of resistance whatsoever? And in my book, that would be through ancient games, words, puzzles, things that you could say to people that they would understand because they understand the book it's referred to. You'd have to have a lot of clever, soft other ways of trying to combat such networks that so aim to control everything. But, the joy of everything is nothing can be fully controlled. Whatever we're up to as humans is nothing compared to the strange cosmic setup that we're on, the planet that we sit on, the natural forces that we kid ourselves that we've got any control over whatsoever.
The
All this,
interesting thing is that here I put this up. The Derinkuyu is the underground city in Turkey, and a lot of people here say also in a local chat, there's a London under London, says Roxy. There's a world in the world, says
well,
the Resistor.
can I tell
Ilya,
you,
yeah,
let me tell you a really freaky fact. What is the oldest thing in Rome? Do you know what the oldest structure in Rome is?
no.
The sewers of Rome. So
Hmm.
for a start, that just shows you the very first people who came to Rome, they knew enough to know you've got to build absolutely massive sewers. And let me tell you something about these sewers. These sewers in Rome are big enough that they used to sail boats in them. So they're not just sewers, they're ways of connecting the sea to Rome. And those sorts of engineering marvels are not things that are often discussed or known because they're just too immensely brilliant.
This is the thing. I think this stuff in sort of the general conversation, the reason why for us this is so magical is because I think we're conditioned to believe that history is this arrow that goes in one direction, also in the sense of us acquiring knowledge and
Mm-hmm.
building on knowledge, and we cannot comprehend that that there have been ancient civilizations that were technologically so advanced when we just we have an iPhone 13, we're the smartest people in the world, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of this linear understanding of progress. I think
Mm-hmm.
that we have is very limiting, and lets us sort of then be flustered when we look at stuff that is older and so sophisticated.
I totally agree. I totally agree, and I think that that is really disturbing. And I was saying to you just before we came on air, perhaps the most disturbing idea of all, worse even than the thought of our own individual deaths, is the thought of the death of our culture. It seems
Hmm.
impossible. A consolation, we're going to die, but at least, our Instagram photos will live on, or at least our civilization will live on. The idea of a natural force obliterating every single thing that this current situation has built, and it's starting again, and people finding some small things and thinking they have created the most sophisticated civilization possible, is an
Hmm.
utterly petrifying thought that we just don't want to go anywhere near. Also, it has to be said, there's different sorts of knowledge. You can build an iPhone 13, but what about the knowledge about plants, for
Plants,
example,
exactly. Hmm.
that people used to have? What about the absolute lack of knowledge about such things that we have? What about, our complete dunceness when it comes to anything to do with the natural world, how to make a fire, how to exist outside, were our civilization to collapse? We have been so estranged from that knowledge. And that is technical knowledge, the technical knowledge of what plant to eat, I would argue, is a greater technical knowledge than, which phone to purchase, right?
Absolutely. Monkey here puts a lot of really cool links here in the local chat. I just saw the sewers of Rome, Cloaca Maxima, which is hilarious
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
Kloake is a term, a word we use in German still for big poop place to make big poopies. Um, Hold on. Here, a stranger said something interesting. Stranger said, one financial expert pointed out that mining and elevator companies show huge unexplainable profits. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Mm.
Yeah. Follow the
Mm.
money.
Well,
Hello.
all my research for my book has taught me one thing: the only thing that matters is resources, like metal,
Hmm.
and that the really rich people in the world are people who just want natural resources, like metal. And you know what's happening now? And again, I'm not making this up. What's really happening now is happening under the sea, where people are excavating and mining under the sea, particularly at the junction of tectonic plates, which is, of course, where all the metal comes out of. In those places, there are a lot of strange robotic machines doing all sorts of mining in areas that belong to nobody and everybody. There's arguments that I have read, I don't know enough to know if it's true, that says China's great interest in what seem like small islands in the South China Sea is because of what lies underneath those islands. South China Sea being a place of immense tectonic activity, and you could, if you want to do some interesting reading, read about underground mining techniques. And this is what I mean. This is what's actually happening in the world. There's a song and dance and a show about Donald Trump and whoever else happening
Yeah.
above the world, but underneath all of that, under the sea, literally underneath all of that, all sorts of stuff is happening that we have no knowledge about, no control over, no say over, and no agency to have anything to do. And I am not a paranoid conspiracy theorist
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say that. It's the truth.
All right. I mean, that's what every paranoid conspiracy theorist says. And I used, I'm not crazy. I'm telling you the truth. Um, Shyla says
Well,
in the local chat, one culture will also take credit for discovery of knowledge that already exists, and perhaps they saw
Absolutely.
and learned in an existing culture which has had it for a very long time. Of course, absolutely. Thank you, Shyla, because the whole aspect of colonialism and such, and
Absolutely.
is
Absolutely.
also there. Yes.
Okay, but listen, let me tell you some interesting facts about Britain, about
Hmm.
England, the country that I live in. So, England has had a tremendous mining history, as viewers may or not know. England is supposedly one of the places of the first 18th, 19th century, and well, of the 18th, 19th century Industrial Revolution. It grew out of the mines of Britain. Britain, as you all know from reading my book, is in fact a gigantic leftover of volcanic activity. The reason there's
Hmm.
so much mining that goes on in Britain is because there's a lot of metals in Britain. And the reason there's a lot of metal in Britain is because it used to once be at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, in the place where the tectonic plates pulled apart and undersea volcanoes grew. And they're extinct now. But the metal that came up from the center of the earth is locked into the mountains of Britain. People have been mining in Britain for a long time, and it's supposed that, for example, the Romans invaded Britain, the Normans invaded Britain, mainly for the metal that was there, because you're not going to have, you need metal to rule the world. But the knowledge that British people gained because of the mining activities allowed them to build machines, to mine better, and in the end gave them the ability to go and conquer a lot of other countries,
Hmm.
because they had developed, they not only had the metal, but they had the machines and technical knowledge to get the metal out of the earth. This enabled them to build boats, go off, and all the places that they went to were places where there's lots of metal. There's once I read an amazing fact that said at a certain point the British Empire controlled 90% of the world's known gold. So that, having got the metal, built the boats because they had the metal, they then went to places where there was other metal. They had the knowledge to know where that metal was to acquire more of it. So that's some of the knowledge that I have acquired in writing my book. It's all about metal. That's the takeaway that I have from things.
And so what about the dragons real quick? Because the Irish Sea looks like a dragon. I just put up that slide. And of
The
course,
Irish Sea looks like a dragon, but this is
and
another
the eye
revelation.
is the Isle of Man is the eye of the dragon. Yes.
Yes, that's my slightly spurious dragon, but my better dragon that I really believe in, and it just came across me as an idea when I was writing my book, is Wales is a country that is absolutely full of metal,
Yeah.
and Wales is symbolized by a dragon. And for
Yeah.
me, dragons symbolize volcanoes, because they are volcanoes. Because what do? They have fire coming out of them. That's what dragons do, and
Yes.
and therefore it became very clear to me. A lot of what my book is just riffs that I'm having on, if you were a secret ruler of the world now or in the past, you would have laid signs down that only other people with your adept knowledge would have. And therefore for ordinary people, you look at it and you think, oh, there's a nice dragon. But for people who know what the knowledge is, what that's saying is, we are the place where metal is found, because we're full of volcanoes, which are living dragons.
Okay, a couple of comments here. Roxy says the spooky one is the Arctic seed vaults should the planet need to repopulate any plant species.
Yes, that's in my book, and it's a fact. There are vaults in the Arctic.
Elaborate on that. Yeah.
There is, or at least I have read on the internet, in several places, not just one. So I feel it's been
Two
substantiated.
places. Yeah, yeah, I understand.
Well, look it up now. I mean, I'm not looking it up because I'm
Academic
teaching.
research. Yes, yes.
But there are cold storage for all seeds and plants in the world are up there. So if there's a nuclear, or whatever happens, then things can be regenerated from there. Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's all sorts of things that go on in the Arctic. There are big satellite. And anyway, I don't want to sound too crazy here. I encourage you to do some research about stuff that's happening in the Arctic.
It's really magical, Susanna. And honestly, again, what is actually, now that you're also talking about this, and I just finished the book for the second time, it really brings magic back into. I mean, I'm not saying my life is boring. I think my life is, I'm pretty content. I do some cool stuff. I earn my modest living with being allowed to do some cool stuff. So I have excitement, but the book makes you walk. I mean, it's inevitable. You walk around and you hear birds, and you and you think about the book and like, what are these birds? What's going on? And that's wonderful. So to me, this also brings me back to my mantra here on this show. Like, why do we actually read fiction? Or what's the initial bug when we were children? It is really to bring magic into the world. That's what
Mhm.
these stories do. And yes, there's television and audiovisual entertainment, blah, 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 but books do that in a magical way because you create the worlds in your mind's eye, in your imagination, and writers like you, they're planting these seeds. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Well,
planting the seeds. Wait, Dex
thank
is
you.
saying here, Dex said something. I got to scroll back here. Dex said, England was never foggy. It was always steamy and electric. Uh-huh.
Well, that
Ah,
sounds good. England once was, though, on the equator, and all the coal mines that are in Britain are the result of a jungle that turned to coal. That this jungle grew during the time that Britain was in the equator. Nothing is ever set. Everything is totally freaky. If you go even a centimeter deep into science or history, you will find immense strangeness, and it's petrifying to us because we don't want to think that our countries move around. Everything must be set, or else it's not in our control, right? That's a feeling that we have. But anyway, that gap, the magic that you talk about, I totally agree with you. That's why I read. That's what I want from the world. That and a story that I can't stop and I have to discover more of. I mean,
yeah.
that's what it is for me. That's what it is for me.
Now we're gonna have a reading, so I would like to ask you to stand up, and the book display with twice will magically appear in front of you.
Okay,
Uh,
fantastic.
that Yeah, turn around and look at the audience, if you will, and the book display will appear. And I'm gonna
Oh,
put on the slide projector here. Yeah, maybe go a few steps forward with the forward arrow here, or with the up arrow. Here we go. Yeah, a
okay,
little
I'm
bit
trying.
outside. There we go. Perfect. Stop,
Yeah.
stop, stop. Don't fall into the
Okay.
water.
Yes, that's my fear.
Susanna was
Okay.
afraid to fall into the water, and she
I'm
almost did.
about to fall. I'm about to fall into the water. Draxter, get
No,
me
she's
back.
running. She's running. I'm gonna teleport you back on the stage.
Teleport me back on the
Camera,
stage.
please.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
control someone else. The government has come to throw me in the water.
yeah, yeah. This is, we're not kidding around here. This is all really happening. Um,
Okay, are you
so
able to?
I'm bringing Susanna back onto the main stage with a teleport.
Okay,
You'll get a
sorry,
little
I'm
message, and
okay.
I'll teleport you
Oh,
back.
okay. So I'm going to press teleport.
Yeah, and here you are, and just stand where you are, and the book display will magically be in front of you. Now, on your website, before we read, also real quick, there's a whole bunch of. I put that slide up just now. When people go to your website, they will see under the header Giants a whole bunch of books that I'm assuming were inspiring for you to write this,
Yes.
and really cool stuff. A lot of stuff that people may know, a lot of stuff that people may not know. And I was making of the modern world, being digital, the geology of Britain, a lot of nonfiction books, a lot of fiction as well, magicians of the gods, and also a book here. Where did the towers go? Okay, so then where did the towers go? And I looked this up. Where did the towers go? Evidence of directed free energy technology on 9/11. Did you
It
read
is.
this?
I did read it. It's worth questioning everything. I've said it to you. It is worth questioning
Okay.
everything. And that was an interesting book. I showed my website to some friends of mine. One of them said, "Take that book off your website." But I didn't because I enjoyed reading that book,
Hmm.
and I can make my own mind up about it. But it does a job for me that I think is the job that we all need to do. It gives me some food for thought to question things. I'm not, I don't necessarily, I don't believe what that book said, but I enjoyed reading it, and it
Hmm.
was a good experience for me in my life to question everything, and I was glad to.
The flat earthers are drilling some holes to the center of the earth in Antarctica, says Dex, because Stranger is saying like something weird is going on with Antarctica. There are no flyover zones, clouded in massive secrecy. Now you're gonna read an excerpt here, and let me just set up, and you may add for the setup what we need. But in this scene, the narrator Nim is basically she was abducted by the second visitor to her flat, the second version of her ex-boyfriend, who was gone, I believe, for 10, 11 years now. I forgot. There's a lot of numerology in the book too. But basically, the first guy shows up. It's her ex-boyfriend Chris, and then she kind of pushes him out the door when he gets too kind of like too annoying. He's not violent or anything. He's just really annoying and pushy. And she pushes him out. And then an hour later, another guy comes. He looks disheveled, and it's also Chris. And he is much more violent. He abducts her, and I think here they are in the woods somewhere, and he tied her up already, maybe in the car. But what's important is that he keeps talking about a book that he needs, and also, what I think we need to know is that they grew up together, the narrator Nim and Chris, and they grew up kind of in a trailer park.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important. And there's a guy, Alan, who may not have been her dad, but who kind of was their surrogate father in that trailer park. Is there anything else we need to know? Oh, yeah, there's a bad guy, Don Thabit. He's kind of a Silicon Valley guy.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, they've driven. He's abducted her. He's got to get this book. He thinks that the first version of him is ahead of them in the search to find this book. He has to find this book at all costs. He has to find what the other one's up to. They have to find this book.
Says the second version of her boyfriend, the second one who abducted her. He says the first one is the fake one, and he's the evil one, and the second one says he's the good guy, right?
Yeah, he says he's the good guy. He says you were fooled. Somebody turned up who looked like me, and he wasn't me. And he got you to tell him where a certain book from our childhood was. And now you've got to get that book before he does, because you don't understand what the stakes are. And she obviously doesn't believe him. She thinks he's just making stuff up. She had a bad breakup from him. She thinks he's crazy, that he turned up twice in her place. There are no clones. But certain things have happened on their drive, and it freaked her out. He's told her some things. And also, he sometimes doesn't seem to know everything that he ought to know, which makes her think
Right.
sometimes maybe they are two of them, and maybe he's not my boyfriend at all, in which case, who is he? They're in the forest. They're totally freaked out. They've been through a lot. She's tied up in the car with him, and she's wearing a burqa. That's the other thing. He's put this burqa over her.
He put the
so
burqa over her.
And they're in this forest, and he's asking her, he's saying, look, I just really need your help. So, looked away down the avenue of trees. Put yourself in my place, I said. We grow up together. We run away. You lie to me endlessly. You betray me. You make me feel bad about myself. String me along. You fuck me over. You treat me with contempt. You slink off without saying anything. I never see you again. Then you turn up out of the blue and do all this to me and tell me this beyond bullshit story about the book and clones and tech and electricity and Alan and secret world rulers. And then you tell me it's not exactly the way you said it to me because you can't trust anyone because you've read all of our texts. Face it, you came back because you want the book for whatever reason. You came back to use me again. I came because I had to, he said. No choice. This is worse than me lying to you. This is me drawing you in. I've sacrificed you. You have to know that. And you're the only thing I care about. Don't even. Real, he said. It doesn't matter now, but you're the only one, and I'm so selfishly glad to be here with you to say all this to you after all this time. For real. No cams, no screens. I'll say it. You can't stop me. Nothing to lose. You and me. Fuck everything else. The only true thing, growing up with you, the feeling between us that I betrayed, watching you for years, through your computer, through your cams, through your screens, your every move, but not able to talk to you, haunting your screens, getting to know you so well, better than I knew you before, better than anyone knows you, better than you know yourself. Yeah, super creepy. The old bad dream of being with you again. You feel it too. You can't lie to me, searching for me through your screens, talking into the ether, and I heard you. Did you think I might? So twisted. Don't fall for it. Deep, dark creep of the internet, unhinged by the tech he got mangled in, or a network prince, knowing just what to say? Yeah, he said, I'm a creep, but who loves like that anymore? Now he's plugged you all into your mirrors, glutted you with porn. Did you sense me? Did you hope? In bars and movie theatres, in the background, in your dreams, I know how you dreamed of me like I dreamed of you. In the flesh, the only thing that matters. Fuck tech, fuck dreams, the risks I took. Once in that Uber, that was too much. I thought you recognized me. Did you recognize me? So intense. Sourcing and fucking women who looked like you or seemed like you or were nothing like you. Faces, behaviors, my whole world catalogue. You don't know where I've been, what I've done, the power I've had, looking up every dirty thought of everyone, rifling through kinks, source whatever itch, hook up by seeming chance with anyone, anywhere, knowing all about them upfront, engineering the meet, scanning for faces that look like yours, don't look like you, and not one of them meaning anything. And no going back to you, I knew that. But here I am, back, and it's the last thing I want, and I don't care anymore if you believe me, if you don't. And if you don't, you can't, it's too big, and it still hurts. It clouds you, what I did to you, not just in the end, but always, lied, not loved you like I should have loved you, like I learned to love you when I lost you. Old little empty boy, drunk on ambition, craving the world to fill my nothing. It's all gone now. For you, the dent's still there. You can't open your eyes, even to this. You've shut yourself up. You're warped. You can't chuck it off and see this clear. You never will. And his tech hooking you, blurring you. You aren't even you anymore. Nobody is. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't stop me loving you, even though you don't exist. I should never have brought you into this. I'll manage alone somehow. I'll set you free. You can go. He sat there among the dark trees. Nice touches, the Uber, I said after a while, and clever, psychologically, and probably right. You hollow fuck. You're a user, I said, eyes clear. You are and were, of me and everyone, anyone useful. Here and now, back in the day. You've got all the words, and now the tech, to spy into everybody's weakness, twist for your own reasons. And you had me once, for a long time. How useful I'd been to him. Once, a pal, a warm body, a family, a source of support and knowledge, a worshipping base from which to venture out into the big bad world and make it his own. And how young and dumb I'd been once. How in need of love and family myself, willing to make do with any crumb of affection, at the mercy of hormones, I cut myself every last bit of slack. It had worked once, his game on me. For him, once, I'd have gone against all sense, betrayed Alan again and again. I'd done everything once, gone along with his recklessness, skipped out on Alan, sold the bead, financed his dreams of New York, got myself educated for us both, loved him. And once his plans came true, he was off in the coldest way, as he would be again once he had that book. Isn't it more like you got what you wanted out of me, where the book is, and you can cut me loose? That's really what you think, he said. I hadn't thought it until I said it. But what sudden terrible sense. Here, now, in the middle of the woods, at night, alone with him, whoever he was, turning to me, reaching down between his legs, the glint of something in the moonlight at his feet, the knife. Lifting it up, while I watched, dry-mouthed, watched him lift up my burqa, reach for my belly, cut the ropes there, do the same to my bound ribs behind me and my bound feet in the footwell. It's okay. I'm not going to kill you. Is that what you think? That I'm going to kill you? I'm setting you free. Getting off the ropes.
And that is Susanna Kleeman reading from Twice. Right here in the woods, applause. Wonderful. Dex says, wait a second, did I hear big bad wolf? Bad wolf? You can take a seat again. Please go
Can
back
I?
to, yes, you
Remind
can.
me how to do that. I'm really sorry. What should I do?
Just use your arrow keys, your right arrow key, and you look
Yeah.
at the seating area.
Oh, yeah, I can see the
You
seating
walk
area.
back there and just click on it, and there you go. Now this, I wonder if this needs a trigger warning, this book.
Possibly.
I mean, if you had like an abusive spouse, I mean, it's pretty relentless. You know, I'm not saying I'm not saying that you should take this off the market and re-release it with a trigger warning, but it's there's no sexual abuse or anything, but they are on the run for a considerable amount of time, and he is tying her up with a burqa. She can't see, she can't breathe. He's drugging her.
Yeah, but yes, possibly it needs a trigger warning. But something that I felt a lot when I was writing it is, I wanted the abusive relationship between her and him is an abusive relationship that we have with our governments, and
Hmm.
I wanted to write something that is rooted psychologically between two people, and it's about the deceit between two people. But I wanted it to be written large into the world, and yes, the government isn't tying us up if we're lucky enough, but the amount of gaslighting that goes on, not just between people, but between governments and people, is
Yeah.
immense. And I think the parallels are there. In which, I think if we're going to apply a trigger warning to my book, let's apply a trigger warning to the world, because there's a lot of deceitful abuse that goes on very large in our world.
This is brilliantly put, Susanna. Oh my God, you're opening my eyes. This is really a stand-in for the gaslighting that is happening from
Absolutely.
politicians who are controlled most often by multinational corporations and doing their bidding.
And they
Um,
control, they hook us in very emotional ways.
you know,
We're all hooked about, it's all about not wanting terrible things to happen to us, to our kids, to our families, to other people, to poor defenseless people, to anyway, I could go on, but it's a very clear thing to me that whatever's going on psychologically between her and her many ex-boyfriends in many manifestations is a way to try and for me to work out what goes on between us and our government. So anyway, there you go.
oh boy, before I get off a tangent, when I asked a friend when we were in America, and I asked a friend who voted for the German Green Party, and I said, well, didn't the Green Party, wasn't the Green Party also part and parcel in dismantling the German social welfare system under the Schröder government when I was in America? And then people, well, yeah, but they have changed. And so, well, really? Anyway, um, I'm not a cynic in that regard. I would say I'm a realist, and I don't have the solution. It's quite difficult. So I would say, pressure from the street, going out there, and there's a
And
lot of
question
yeah.
and questioning everything, doing your own research.
Yeah, true, but I also think that you know, it's a very complex situation where since we're on that subject, I mean, in Germany, the established party, me as a progressive left person, the German left party, uh, there are great people in there, but they also have leaders in that party who are extremely problematic. One is outright comes from the car industry. I mean, it's absurd. The other one is against immigrants, just like the right wingers do it. So it's really uh, in the sort of the electoral landscape is extremely depressing. And so,
Mm.
what is one to do? Because I don't want to become like a lot of people from my sort of milieu of sort of middle class German upbringing are just completely like, okay, well, there's nothing we can do, so we might as well just party and spend our money and go on vacation and then bitch about stuff and also bitch about the idiots that believe in QAnon. That's not the solution. So, yeah,
The solution is better sorts of people should become politicians, but it feels like a lot of work to us, doesn't it, being a politician? On the one hand, we want good
yeah,
politicians, but on the other hand, we don't want to do the work of being one ourselves. But I think there will come a point where it just becomes crystal clear that if we want things to be better, we ourselves have to become the politician. But there's different ways of becoming politicians, and I totally believe that writing is political work. There's lots of work to be done. There's lots of different work to be done. But
yeah.
I would say the choice isn't just being cynical or believing wholeheartedly in fools. There's another aspect to it, which is do it yourself.
True, and also what I would say is organizing and going out on the street. There's fantastic protesters going on here in Germany. They're called the Last Generation. I wholeheartedly support them. I also support labor action, strike action, but also the union movement has to be reformed a little bit
But
because
it's interesting, isn't
yes,
it? In Britain, the union movement is a much more effective opposition than it would seem our own politicians. And
yep.
there's one thing about going out and protesting, but it doesn't mean anything if it's just empty protesting. That's a kind of carnival. That's just a sort of fun day out where you can meet your friends and smash a few windows and then go home again. That's not the
Oh,
point.
absolutely. But
And
look
that's why
how
union,
yeah,
but union moves are often much more regimented and much they have an actual purpose and aim. In Britain, there's a tremendous
they have
I
to. Yes, every country is a little different with their history of the union movement. One of the problems, like I said, I find that very important. But one of the interesting things that are happening now in Germany is that a lot of unions, specifically, like let's say auto workers, there are people who are represented by the union. They have very cushy jobs, but the big auto manufacturers, there is a two-tier system where they exploit immigrant labor, a very, very low tier, very badly paid, very bad working conditions, and and they're not part of the union. So the that's just one example where the union, they're not bad people, but they're very, very aligned with management, and they are punching down
Mhm,
as well.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so it's a complex situation, but please do look up Letzte Generation, last generation. Those are the
Okay.
kids. I'm saying
I'm adding
kids.
it to my notes from
They
this.
are gluing themselves on the road, and there's I support them. I think they're awesome. There's a lot of my friends who think that they're terrorists or disruptive. Yes, they are disruptive, but this is the effective type of protest in the climate movement. Much better than what you were saying, Susanna, going out and waving some signs on the one hand or torching cars. These guys are doing effective stuff. They're disrupting the status quo, which is super important. Stranger says national strikes are what we need to happen. Absolutely. So now we got to move on because we're oh my God, we're running out of time. We're always running out of time. Now you said earlier, not enough people write fiction, or no, that's not what you said. You said more people write nonfiction. Interestingly enough, Susanna Kleeman, you are one of them. So you're moving to the field of nonfiction by way of, and let me look this up, by way of YouTube.
Mhm,
So you have a YouTube show
mhm,
about dating. Well, I appeared on that show. Here's the
mhm.
website. Put this up here on the slide projector. You interviewed a whole bunch of different people. Is sex better when you get paid for it? A date with a porn advocate, a date with a artist, a date with a pickup artist. Unbelievable subject matter here.
Mhm.
Of course, the best one. I mean, Jason Miles from This Is Revolution podcast, a very cool guy. But right next to him, a date with an avatar in Second Life. That is probably the best one. That's with me. But anyway, what is the fatal dates thing? And then we'll move to the upcoming book.
So this comes out of, and I should say twice also comes out of, my fondness for the French thinker Jean Baudrillard, who most people know
Ah, yeah.
because he is the inspiration behind The Matrix, or at least the Wachowskis cited him as their big influence, and Neo in that film. He has a copy of Baudrillard's most famous book, Simulacra and Simulation, which is hollowed out, and he keeps his illegal software at the very beginning of the book. He keeps it inside a copy of Baudrillard's book, Simulacra and Simulation. So Baudrillard wrote a book called Fatal Strategies, which is a very great book. Fatal strategies are what you use when normal strategies no longer work. And fatal strategies are,
Mhm.
instead of trying to sort of argue until you're blue in the face with people who don't want to hear you, instead use different techniques and different ways to upset the status quo. I
This
won't
is
go into.
hilarious. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but just talking about Letzte Generation, the kids that glue themselves onto the streets to disrupt car, and they're getting assaulted, by the way. This is kind of what they're doing, I think.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
it is. It
Hmm.
is. But there are all sorts of other fatal strategies apart from direct action. And one of the things that Baudrillard said that really is affected me is in, and you can see it in my novel twice. He says the real world doesn't exist. He says the real world is a construct that helps us go from birth to death. It's a construct that people in the past always knew it didn't exist. They always knew the Catholic Church wasn't real, but you nodded along and you went along with it. And then you had a whole other secret life behind the hay bales where you kind of did what you liked. You had a private life and you had a public life.
Hmm.
And he says that a problem with our society today is we don't have a private life anymore. Everything is public. And we've lost the idea that the state isn't real, that it's just a necessary construct that helps us not get too scared about death and gives us something to think about. And that, in fact, real stuff happens outside and beyond it. Baudrillard, is interested in human relations, sex, because it's a place where the reality of your body comes up against whatever your mind is telling yourself. So you can say that you like a certain thing, and you can say it until you're blue in the face on Twitter, but your body will not lie when it comes to whether you like someone or not. So the body and what happens with your body and sexuality is a very interesting place where all hypocrisy and lie falls apart in that place because your
Hmm.
body wants what it wants, and you can't explain it away. he's interested. So one of the fatal strategies he's interested in is the power of what, let's call, for the sake of argument, women, but it doesn't necessarily mean women as we understand it. It's a much more complicated argument than that. So what he says is an ancient power. He says the women have a lot more power than men. That the world as we know it, the capitalist world that we live in, is in many ways something created, a fantasy created by men as an attempt to defend themselves against the awesome power of women. But he says women have the power to men can do everything. They can do maths better, yeah, whatever. They can run faster, but women can destroy the world with one hand gesture, Draxtor, and that hand gesture is just the wave of the hand to brush something away. Because I'm in Second Life and I don't know how to use my hands properly, I can't show you the gesture, but to throw it away. So he says a strategy against a horrible capitalistic society, a fatal strategy, is to use the power of what for the sake of argument today we'll call women, the vast power of seduction. So he says men can say whatever they want, but behind the scenes, if a beautiful woman appears, then everything that they say in public means nothing. And behind the scenes, oh, I'm so sorry, but terribly rudely and badly. My phone is ringing. Hold on 1 second. I'm so sorry. I'm going to
This
switch
is
it off.
Jean Baudrillard calling and saying that women do have the power to wave the phone away, or maybe they don't.
So
See,
sorry. I
no
can't
problem.
believe that I've so amateurly done this. So where was I in this immense theory? Oh, yes. He says the power of seduction, the power of sex, the power particularly that women wield over men, what we're calling women over what we call men, is a tremendously powerful fatal strategy that can be used against men. Can be used against evil capitalism that some men promote, and can show it just to be the fantasy that it is. He says the danger of things like capitalism, the danger of many of the things that happen in our world today is we actually believe that they're true, and we should understand that yes, they're true. It's very difficult to talk about this. People suffer terrible consequences of the unfair world that we live in. But it is also just a construct that we've all agreed to and signed along to. It is possible to step out of it and think of things in different ways. And that's what he's trying to do. It's kind of fritz your brain. So I've moved... my move into nonfiction and into having my YouTube channel is my fatal strategy. All I want to do, Draxtor, is sit at home and write crazy novels. And I've got an immensely crazy novel in my head that I'm desperate to write. It's going to cost me a lot of money to write that because it's going to take me 2 or 3 years to sit there and write it. I would like a publisher, unlike my beloved current publisher, Sublation Press, who are just fantastic, but are a small left-wing press. I want someone to come along and give me a lot of money so I can sit there, not have to do my day jobs for the next 2 to 3 years and write my book. But that's not coming to me so easily. So my fatal strategy was, okay, if that's how it is, let me do some stuff that I'm interested in that will encourage a wider readership of my first book, maybe even get some readership of a non-fiction book that I might write about something I'm interested in. And that will give me some momentum to go towards being able to afford to write this novel that I do want to write. It's very complicated. It will be very fun. It sits in my head currently. So as part of my fatal strategy, I decided to write some nonfiction about something I'm interested in, which happens to be human relationships, men and women, what so often we are told about male-female relationships. And I should say here, I'm approaching this from a very heteronormy perspective. Apologies. But how much of it just is completely untrue and is just utter bullshit. And furthermore, denudes women of the tremendous power that they have. And so I'm writing my fatal dating tips. And alongside that, along with my colleagues at Sublation Media, I decided to do this podcast because I want to talk to men about these unusual ideas about male-female dynamics that I have gleaned from reading Jean Baudrillard, but also Draxtor. I don't know if I said this to you at the time, to secretly do some fatal strategies myself while talking to my often, but not always, male guests. And let me tell you, it was a very powerful and interesting experience.
Real quick before we go to a reading from the upcoming book, Fatal Dating Tips, I'm curious because, I mean, this makes sense to me, but what I don't understand, if you want to carve out time and focus for a novel that is in your head, I am not sure if running a YouTube show is the best idea. I mean, I've been running podcasts and stuff, and one thing that I noticed, and in the back of my brain, it's been hammering at my brain for years, is that I need to cut down, and I am brutally cutting down. I stopped my podcast. When was that? Maybe 2 years ago. I'm gonna not completely wrap up this book club, but people know it's going to be downsized drastically to so that I'm not going to run myself thin. I don't know how people do this. Everybody is different. I realize
Because my last guest, I don't know if you saw in this lineup that you're in, my last guest, someone even more amazing than you. Is that possible? It's called Boris Groys,
Boris
and
Groys, yeah, he's here on the screen. He's the last one. Making yourself into an art object is the title. Yeah.
he's an absolutely brilliant writer. He's a Russian art critic and philosopher. I cannot tell you how good his book, Becoming an Artwork, is. You should read it, Draxtor. You're going to love it. It's
I'll
very
put it on the stack. Yeah.
slim. He challenged me directly, exactly on these things, and he said to me, why are you doing this? And it's if you have something to say, it's you have to go more deep and strange inside yourself than doing this kind of work.
Yes,
what it
you
affords.
have to go deep. And if if you become a content machine for whatever reason, even if the cash is flowing in, or if you feel you need to do this because there's a void and there's an audience and you want to educate that audience, if you have that kind of evangelist drive, I completely understand that. But you are still in a content hamster wheel. And interestingly, the excerpt that you're going to read from your upcoming book, you sent me this. It's about self-commodification. I've never heard this term. It's a brilliant term. I realized last year that I tend to self-exploit
Mhm.
because I'm so passionate about what I do that my employer or my various employers as a freelancer or a gig worker, I mean, I enjoy what I do, but I also self-exploit, and I think the people who pay me a modest, modest salary or fee, they realize that. And my wife actually used to joke years ago and said, well, if you think that Linden Lab will ever pay you, the makers of Second Life, you're delusional, because they know that you're gonna would do it for free anyways. I mean, that was years ago. I mean, now they're paying me, but that is a trap that a lot of passionate people can so easily fall into, because the machine and the power structure is not, it's not changing.
Yes, I mean, I have to say, in many ways, when I was doing my fatal dates, it's research for the book I'm writing, and it did give me a lot of research. It gave me, I was testing out some stuff, and I feel I've tested it out. I'm also I can't say the word Baudrillard anymore because I've said it too much on my podcast. But I believe that there is disruption to be done further in this field, and I think that some people, can you believe it, Draxtor, don't read books, and I feel
Yep.
so very
Yep.
passionate about some insights that I feel I have into male-female
Good
dynamics,
point.
that
Yep.
I want to be able to reach even those people who don't read books, because it's not just that I want to talk to women, and definitely these tips are for men and for women, but I have acquired late in my life some knowledge that would have been very useful indeed for me to have had early in my life, and
Yeah.
I want people to know it, basically. So yes, you're totally right, and in fact I'm really enjoying not doing this show currently, and spending a lot of time in my head
But what you
doing
just
my
said is exactly what you just said. I think that is I can completely respect that. That is something that drives me as well, where you think like you have something to offer and you need to find an avenue other than books, because the reality is, as much as you would like to force people to really strap them down, that's what I would like to in the Draxter communism that is going to come soon. Oh my God, people are going to be forced to read. They're going to be like strapped down. There's going to be a book in front of them.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
until that happens, we need to find other avenues to share our insight.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly, I agree.
Okay, so let's read this excerpt here, and then we gotta wrap it up. This is so wonderful. So I need to ask you please to stand up again, and a book display.
It's appeared so magically right in front of
It,
me.
it already has appeared in front of you. This an AI lectern that knows that where it needs to appear.
Okay, I'm not moving any arrows. I'm not
Don't
moving
move,
any
don't
arrows.
move, just stand there, that's fine.
Okay.
Oops.
Am I there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to read tip number 4 from my Fatal Dating Tips, which is coming out shortly from Sublation Press. And this tip is called "It's Fun to Be Done." Yes, being the doer is where it's at. Girl bossing, leaning in, being the chooser, the avid little shopper. Men have gone out and got what they wanted for millennia. Now it's ladies' night, and I'll have my beefsteak extra raw with hot sauce on the side ASAP, please. Baudrillard shows how very capitalistic it is to see liberation only as everyone becoming doers, or subjects, as theorists say. In the West, we've prized being subjects very highly. It's kind of like being a queen or a king, the free person with the power to choose and arrange the universe the way you like it, not the powerless passive product or object waiting to be selected as a bit player in someone else's scheme. It's great if you want to push forwards for pleasure, the active one who wants to do. It's also great to want to be done. But try shouting that out down the disco even today. Oh, hold on. I'm so sorry. I've lost my. Yeah, sorry about that. But try shouting that out loud down the disco even today. Announcing you like to take it can still end up with you being called freaky, weak, tainted, messy, sissified, deluded, unfeminist, wrong, unliberated, and wanton, among other choice terms. These days, we may feel that being done is a speciality interest performed with equipment at dank parties or in billionaires' lairs. Ay caramba! Enjoying receiving can mean enjoying letting someone else put parts of their body in your body, or leave their fluids inside you, or use you as a receptacle, or just take over your body for their pleasure. You dirty skank to those who lust in a different way. Socialists have other objections. For some, saying it turns you on to disport yourself for other people as an object for someone else's pleasure is extra evidence of how capitalism can twist our poor minds, make us think it's okay to turn ourselves into a product, make all connections transactional. Turning yourself into an object is sometimes called self-commodification, and it can be part of the socialist project to want to liberate us from this supposedly dreadful state. Or else it can mark you out as debauched or reactionary, someone non-revolutionary who deals with the unfair way wealth and security are currently arranged by playing with the trauma in private games rather than working in public with others to make actual real change in the actual real world. Of course, self-commodification against your will, because you don't understand the implications or because your body is your only way to get cash or affection or deal with trauma, is exploitative and wrong. And if you're doing it to blot out personal or political problems, sex and pleasure are private and fleeting. The quick fix won't hold. All the usual provisos. Just because you like taking it and sometimes enjoy being treated as an object doesn't mean you want to be left unsatisfied or be taken advantage of or get emotionally shafted or uphold injustice or get physically hurt, unless that's your thing. And yes, being done makes you vulnerable. That's what can make it feel so sexy. Removing a protective psychological layer to let someone take you over because they can't get enough of you, or so they say. Opening yourself up to others like that means taking a chance, trusting someone not to abuse the intimate power that you've given them. That's risky. What can we ever really know about other people, especially when we start out with someone? Good reasons, perhaps, why we may feel that being done is a thing of the past we should step away from for safety reasons, living as we do in such safety-conscious times. But, as you may be unsurprised to learn, Baudrillard isn't a big fan of safety culture. These days, he says, we must be suspicious of everything that wants to help. Which is lucky, because if being done is wrong, outdated, unsafe, unliberated, a speciality kink, or politically suspect, what else is going to service all these subject doers? Robots, virtual images, people outside our culture, sex workers, impoverished students? Because doers generally want to service someone different from them. They generally don't want to be banged up against other subjects, each waiting their identical turn. If you do, what you generally want is a partner who will succumb to your desire, yield to you, get conquered by you and your debonair charm, give it up to you and you alone because you won them over by proving you know how to do them, service them in turn, due to being so into them and knowledgeable and cool. Becoming, yielding, conquering, I hear you, 50 shades of ick. We may tut or snigger when we hear these terms and feel we've culturally outgrown them, but we haven't, despite what we may claim in public about evolving into enlightened bods, keen to shag in equal, similar, active, productive, healthy, Instagrammable ways. Reach for the smelling salts if you need to, but in your heart you must admit that these power dynamic terms can connect directly to our groins, and not if we're into S&M. They're the underlying whisper of lots of hot sex, and our attempts to repress them only lead to fraught connections, fake lives, and 50 shades of huge book and movie sales for cultural projects that dare say their name. But what about desire? I hear you complain. What about choosing? So sorry, hold on one minute. What about choosing? This is all very well, but isn't it a bit retro? What about having the power to select for yourself instead of sitting patiently like some Jane Austen lady? What if you end up getting done by some mangy brute? Which I say, for Lord's sake, I'm not saying you have to admit all comers. And if this is your line, then it's clear you don't yet know the true meaning of power and haven't blown up all your received ideas about desire, which actually doesn't exist, as Baudrillard has shown me, and I will show you in due course. For now, satisfy yourself with what he says about choosing, which is this: choosing is a bore. You can think it's the height of power and liberation to be the one who chooses, who selects from different options. Baudrillard has different ideas. In his book Fatal Strategies, he tells the story of Beau Brummel, the 18th century English dandy who liked to travel with his manservant. One day he was in Scotland, Baudrillard writes, in a region where there were many lakes, each one more beautiful than the other. Brummel turned to his servant and asked him, "Which lake do I prefer?" Having to choose is really a bore. That's what servants are for. In fact, it's a mark of how very capitalistic we are that choice is so important to us, and wanting to be done can raise red flags. It can sometimes feel like we've been trained only to see value in things that are useful and measurable that we might pay money for. Wanting something, that's easy to understand. Wanting to let someone have something for free, to give them pleasure and for no other reason, how suspect. The person offering that must have something wrong with them, we may feel, maybe a bit simple-minded. Or else they're liars, pretending to offer themselves up to us from the good of their hearts, but actually using that deep lure as emotional blackmail to bind us to them, or for financial or other advantage, or because they're vain or narcissistic. Other, less commercial times and places have had less problem with receivers. In fact, this duality, the active and passive principle, has been the basis of entire cultures, yin and yang, for example. And yes, I see you turn up your nose. You're not here for the eternal feminine or what other cringe of woo I may be cooking up under my gussied-up Baudrillard. Fair enough, I share your distaste with the mystic and with the casual association of women with nature or magic or goodness or any of that gubbins. Nevertheless, a world that can only praise active go-getting is out of whack. For some people, perhaps for all of us, in the end, if we can soften our hard selves enough to admit it, giving pleasure gives pleasure. Now, and blah, 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 hold on. Okay. But back to business. It isn't just fun to be done, Baudrillard says, it is everything. Dual concepts like yin and yang are about two equal forces that keep each other in check with their different but symmetrical equal power. Baudrillard's big secret is between what I'm calling women and what I'm calling men, there is no equality or symmetry. The real reason it's fun to be done is because it is the one who is done who has all the power. Coin every submissive nose.
Awesome, Susanna. This is amazing. And these are then tips that we can hopefully use in the real world, which is not real, according to Baudrillard.
Absolutely, definitely. And yes, I will go into all of that. May I just apologize? I'm reading it. The book isn't printed yet, so I was just reading it off my Word document, and sometimes it slipped around a bit in my excitement of being here. So sorry for any interruptions.
No problem at all. I need to catch up on Baudrillard myself, but these tips again. I mean, this is called fatal dating tips.
Practical tips. These are actual practical dating tips to improve your love life, your relationship life, your sex life. I've got a lot to say on this topic because of my readings of Baudrillard, who's mansplained all this to me.
Exactly. And so we just have a few minutes left, but I have to ask this question because I was on your show and we talked about Second Life, and I'm not a Baudrillard expert. Shame on me. I bought a few books and I did not get around reading. They're on the top of my stack. I know that he will totally blow my mind. There's no doubt about it. The subtitle of your book is A Practical Guide to Finding Real Sex and Love in an Unreal World. And there's a dude with a VR headset also on the cover. Of course, Susanna, as you know, I'm a man, so I'm already fragile, but I'm also a second lifer, so I'm doubly fragile. So
Hmm.
when we here are being dismissed as not being real,
And
then
my
we get
dis-
very offended. In our conversation, Susanna, I was not that offended because your frame of reference is already that the physical world is not real. So why would Second Life be real? That makes no sense logically. But
yes.
in just in a minute or less, our relationships, because I mean I'm doing a show about this, and I have seen people here fall in love and go through their avatar, which is their soul. This is the essence that is put forward as their avatar embodiment, and I have seen it uh, firsthand how people have got together and they stayed together and they haven't known how they looked in the physical world for sometimes years,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and then they slowly peeled back the onion
Hmm.
of their physical form, but their avatar as an essence as it was transmitted here in this world was much more real to them than their sort of whatever quote unquote God-given form. Is this real? What we can these relationships that we form here or not, Susanna?
Well, you were obviously Draxtor, my very most favorite guest, and you made the most insightful and important comments of all my guests when you appeared on the show. And one of the things you said to me is we're all avatars.
Yeah.
And why is Second Life any different from the real world? I totally agree with you. These wonderful stories you're telling me about people who found true soul connection in Second Life. Not that I in any way am dissing Second Life. I think it's a magical world. I'm so happy that you have introduced me to Second Life, and I really enjoy being here. Thank you for having me. But I will say to you, are these everyday stories of life in Second World? Is this what happens to the vast majority of people who come into Second Life? I think that there's always going to be outliers wherever we go. And for me, the danger with such gorgeous, fascinating, interesting virtual spaces as Second Life is you can spend your whole life here. And it may be that the majority of people who spend a great deal of their time and life here do meet their soulmates here. But my suspicion would be that these are unusual stories. And in fact, what happens more often is spending your life in the digital space to the and forgetting about the natural other spaces. I totally agree with you that to make a distinction between a virtual space and the real world is a very crude, stupid thing to do. It's not like you're going to find necessarily any more real relationships in the real world than you might here. But at least in the outside, you can touch people. That's to me, and I feel sometimes that our culture is one where actually touching other people, actually kissing other people, exchanging fluids with other people is more and more a slightly taboo area that we seem to be moving away from. We might get diseases, we might get our heart broken,
Yeah.
and we seem to be pivoting more towards a space which tells us, well, why not settle for something second best, which is not remotely what I'm suggesting that Second Life is. Why not settle for something that won't give you exactly the same thrill, but might not give you a disease and certainly won't break your heart in the same way? And my book is an investigation of that.
Mhm. That is again a whole other subject that will take hours and hours and hours to explore. I need to discipline myself not to respond to this because this is an insightful and articulate, great statement that you made. Of course, I have a retort to that, but we're running out of time. um, uh, Poliana says, agree, we need more and more hours. I mean, one thing that I do want to say in closing is um, you're right. I have absolutely no numbers. I have no statistics to prove that Second Life is the land of milk and honey, where everything is just everybody is expanding their minds like on some good mushroom trips, which I don't take because I don't take any drugs. But more power to people who find it expanding. I don't have those. I don't have those numbers. I don't have these statistics. The potential in any space that is not algorithmically and capitalistically driven. Yes, Second Life is owned by a company that is a for-profit company, but what you do here is not driven by any algorithm that is siphoning off your information or your behavior to enrich anybody. It's merely like a telephone, if you will. And it reminds me of my grandfather who used to not have a telephone until 1983. And then my father said, it's ridiculous. You're 80 years old. You need a telephone. I don't want to call the neighbor, get you over here and stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous. If there's an
Mhm,
emergency, my grandfather said, I want to talk to a real person. I don't want to talk to a piece of plastic.
mhm,
I always use that story to explain um, the power of a digital world, even when we don't have a person, eye to eye or face to face, and
mhm,
also the haptic experience of touching someone. People will tell you, Susanna, that when they wrote a love letter hundreds of years ago to a loved person that they loved, you would read that letter, you would be able to feel that person by reading the letter, or like a love poem, you would get sensations in your body. Anyway,
mhm.
but this is a whole different we
We shall discuss at another
yeah.
time.
See,
Either
this is what men do, Susanna. Men says, "Well, this is great, or a great statement that you made, and I'm not going to retort, and then I'll do it anyways."
yes,
It's terrible.
that's fine. You do what you need to do there, Draxter. I come at you with profound compassion.
But now I feel I have the last word, because also on but we are okay. We got a couple of minutes, just real quick. I'm going to put this up because you wrote a post on the Sublation Media, which we mentioned, which is the publisher of your next book. That's a new outfit by Douglas Lane and some other great people. You wrote an article here, "Is Marxism a male safe space?" which is just really awesome. And I encourage everyone to read this. I'm just going to read here this first paragraph. A nice man on Twitter asked, "Is the relative lack of women philosophers, political theorists, and philosophy students to do with historic oppression? Or is it that women aren't, in his word, autistic enough to try to create a logical system of everything?" That is pretty damn offensive to me, frankly. This is similar to when Larry Summers said, "Oh yeah, women are just not good at science. That's why they don't enroll
That's
in
not what he
math and
said.
physics."
To be fair to this guy on
But that's
Twitter,
how
he
it
said
sounds to me.
yeah, he is a very sensitive, sweet, thoughtful, clever guy on Twitter, and I saw that he's asking a genuine question. There
Hmm.
are less women philosophers than men, whereas, for example, in social sciences or in novels, it's not like that at all. Why is it particularly that in philosophy, and I got to say, particularly in Marxist philosophy, there are very, very, very few women? And it's a good question. It's a good question. So
Mm.
I tried to answer it for him.
Okay, so people got to read. They go to Sublation Media, and "Is Marxism a male safe space?" Fantastic stuff. And thank you, Susanna, for being so open-minded to engage this person. I would have canceled him. I'm a big
No,
fan
no,
of
no.
cancel culture because it saves a lot of time. Um, uh, Having said that, this show is canceled. No, not quite yet. But Susanna Kleeman, her book is Twice, and coming up soon is Fatal Dating Tips on from Sublation Media. Just really awesome to talk with you. Wonderful, and thank you for coming here to this strange virtual world,
Thank you so
Susanna
much for
Kleeman.
having me in this lovely virtual world. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. That was such a great conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone.
If you only read one book, just please read that one. And if you have complaints about it, if you didn't like it, direct them to me and blame me that I have been pushing this book like some people push magic mushrooms, which are
You,
also occurring in the book. Very important plot, right? Always mushrooms in there. Jesus Christ.
yes, 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 yes.
As a teetotaler, I don't know if I approve, but it's only a book, so it's not like a haptic experience where I have to take them. Now, thank you, dear
Thank you.
audience. Good to see Full House. If you enjoy this program, well, get the book, support the author. Tip Linden dollars into the tip jar for our volunteer staff. Where's the tip jar? Here we go. The tip jar is the Draxtor sculpture. And what else? Become a YouTube member of the YouTube channel if you like. There's a Ko-Fi link in there as well. We have a few expenses, not the land. The land is supplied by Linden Lab, but avatar outfits and such. The Second Life Book Club was established April 8th on 2020. Been doing this for a while now. The show is produced by yours truly. Camera sound by Isabel Sharon. Avatars made by Bespoke Caravan. Research by Shyla the Super Gecko. And Monkey, the location is always second.live/book club. There is a teleporter there. People ask me this every week. Where's the location? Where's the location? This is the web location. You click on it, it opens your Second Life viewer, and you boom, there you are. Calendar is at draxtor.com/Second Life book club, and that's it. The show is every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, with the exception of next week, where we have a free for all at 11 a.m. Please consult um, the calendar, but I will remind people through the group notice as well. So that's next week. And if you want to read something, if you have work in progress, let me know a few days ahead of time. Sponsors, as I mentioned, Bespoke Caravan, incredible, fantastical avatars. I profiled them. They're out of Long Beach, California. A wonderful little, small little business run by four people, a group of four people from Long Beach and Romania and Pakistan. Yeah, one of the designers is actually in Pakistan in the physical realm. The other sponsor is the Black Forest. Arden Schwartzman makes all sorts of things, but he also makes board games, and these board games are playable. They're high detail, low land impact, and Arden not only kind of is sort of very close to copyright intellectual property violation with his versions of some of these games, which are very playable, but he also creates his own games. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for being here. Oh, here it is. Here's my slide for the 11 a.m. Next week, 11 o'clock. Okay? I don't want any tears of people showing up late. Thank you, and good night, good day, good afternoon.